Hello, goddesses. Zena here with your temple training for today. And I am going to do it while I'm getting my second session of cardio done. So I'm having to double team it, put things together. So today, if you hop on, say hi, comment. I'm on my phone doing the live, which becomes problematic in letting me see if people are commenting or not. So hopefully I will get to see if that is the case. But for today's training, so I asked a question last week, at the end of last week, and the question was, what is your biggest frustration on your fitness journey? And we got a lot of really good answers. And so I want to go ahead and address some of those issues today in our training, because they are issues that I have had as well. So let's see, one of the issues that came up was impatience, and someone else had put slow weight loss. Hello, Irina. So I wanted to address impatience and slow weight loss, and that is a real thing. A fitness journey is a time-consuming process, and when done well and in a way that is where you can adhere to it, it's a slow process. And there can be times when we're not seeing a lot of change. And it is hard when we've been enculturated by diet culture to want things quickly, right? We hear, lose this amount of weight in 6 weeks, 10 pounds in 6 weeks, this, that, or the other thing. And there's a lot of we want to do it fast. Hi, Crystal. And the truth of the matter is, when it's really fast like that, it doesn't tend to stay. And it doesn't tend to be true fat loss. And we've gone over a lot about the difference between fat loss and weight loss. So two different things, right? Weight loss being that we can be losing muscle and water and fat. Fat loss being we're trying to retain our muscle and retain our water. Well, not retain in a bad way, but we're not losing a bunch of water in the process. We want to be encouraging our bodies to lose fat. And when we're doing muscle building is even slower than fat loss. And it can take weeks to months to see a muscle. Yes, we must be hydrated. So, and that's what happens when you take carbohydrates out of the diet. People will see rapid weight loss because they had not only pulled the carbohydrates out, but they have pulled the water out of their body, because the carbohydrates hold water in the body. Carbohydrate. So, anyway, you have to give it a lot of time. And besides that, the process isn't linear. So we'll see success, and then we'll see plateaus, and then we'll have, success again. And so it isn't a linear process, particularly if you're on, for me, when you're spending your time building a certain type of physique, there is a building phase and cutting phase. It's just not linear weight loss anymore. It's building, it's made up of building and cutting phases that you have to cycle through to get to where you want to go. You need to rebuild your right leg. Yeah, that's going to take some time, right? But the nice thing is muscle memory is a thing. So if you had, muscle and strength in that leg before, you should be able to rebuild it faster than you would otherwise. Okay, I got to take off my sweatshirt now that I'm getting the heart rate up there. Okay, so it is a journey, it is a process, and you do have to be patient, which is why you should be doing a program you can stick to. If it's only something you can stick to for 6 weeks, and then it's you just can't stand it anymore, that is not the program that you should be following. Maybe it's too restrictive, maybe it cuts out a bunch of foods that you like. Because it takes time, you need a plan you can adhere to. The best diet for you to be on is the one you can adhere to. And that's why in my programming, we do macro tracking. We don't take out carbs. It's not a particular diet. It's a flexible dieting based on things that you like and you enjoy. You're working within the macro targets. Okay, so the next thing that people said was a frustration on their fitness journey was low motivation or staying motivated. I have done a couple talks in here about the myth of motivation and how you cannot rely on motivation. Motivation is a feeling that comes and goes. We have motivation and we're demotivated, and we have motivation and we're demotivated. You cannot rely on motivation. When it's there, use it, okay? Great, icing on the cake. But if you rely on motivation, you will either not start or you will stop at some point because you don't feel motivated. Right now, I always feel motivated to do my cardio or to do my weight training. There are days I have to drag this ass to the gym, okay? And you do it because it's the promise that you made yourself. It's the agreement that you made with yourself. And you have to learn to cultivate discipline. If you're waiting to start your fitness journey to be motivated, that doesn't mean that motivation doesn't hit. That doesn't mean we don't have moments of inspiration. But those won't keep you on your path. Motivation, inspiration is like this. Discipline is what carries you through those ups and downs. And so you have to cultivate consistency and discipline, which consistency was one of the things that people said was very frustrating for them. So when people are having trouble with consistency, my biggest suggestion is to look at what you're asking yourself to do, because you may be asking yourself to do too much change at once. And it's very hard for us to be consistent if we've created, like we're here and we've created an expectation of us to be here. That's very hard to be consistent with. It's easier to be here and create a goal that's here. Learn to be consistent here. And then once you're really super consistent here, then we can up the goal. And we build that consistency. And then we can come to here and build that consistency. But if we start out of the gate up here, that's very hard to be consistent with. So when I started back to my strength training, as a lot of people know my story, this original group was a squat group. My smallest little bit that I was like, what's the smallest thing I can commit to? Yes, Crystal, baby steps. What's the smallest thing I can commit to? The smallest thing I can commit to is the 100 squats, building up to 100 squats a day. That literally was like 10 or 15 minutes out of my day. And I said, okay, I'm going to start there. That's the only expectation I had of myself at the time. Then once I built into that, I started to add on and grow. And now I strength train, I think 5 days a week. And, have my cardio, and I have a whole regime and program that I do. And I'm doing what I do now, which was what I love, which is helping other women get onto their fitness journey and stay on their fitness journey. So consistency, if you're having trouble being consistent, you got to look at a couple things. Are you setting your expectations too high? Are you expecting too much change all at once? Are you doing something that you can integrate into your life? If you're someone who enjoys, having fruit and some rice and maybe some bread, don't go keto, Don't do that to yourself. Don't expect yourself to give up the foods that you love and be consistent with it. Find a diet plan that allows you to have moderate consumption of the things that you enjoy. Are you expecting yourself to do exercise that, are you like, okay, well, I need to go out and run 30 minutes a day, but you hate running? Well, of course, you're not going to be consistent with that. Maybe it's better for you to find a dance class to keep you moving. And again, so like setting the not low expectations, but setting expectations that are like train yourself to success instead of training yourself to failure. So when you're here, but you expect yourself to be consistent here and you can't do it, then we fail. Then we're like, oh, I didn't do it. I failed. But if you can set an expectation that's not as big of a jump that you know that you can make time and time and time again. I mean, think of it as jumping. Think of it as like, okay, you aren't really practiced at jumping. You're going to start box jumping. Are you going to start with the tallest box? Or are you going to start with the shortest box and figure out how to jump first and land that jump every time before you increase how high that box is? Same thing here. So don't come out of the gate with expectations that are just sort of out of range for what you've been doing in your life, okay? Let's see, another one, too tired to start, wearing out easily. Again, I'm going to refer this back to picking small baby steps. And bodies in motion like to stay in motion. And bodies at rest like to stay at rest. So there is effort. Yes, we can get to the end of the day. I can get to the end of the day. Sometimes I don't get to my workout until like 9 o'clock at night. And I'm tired. And the last thing I want to do is get up off the couch. But I've made that commitment. Obviously, I have a show. Tired or not, I got to get up and do something. And if it was tired to the point like I've pushed my body too far and my body's like begging for rest, that's different. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about ignoring the body's signal that you've overdone, right? We're talking about the natural, you get to the end of the day, you've worked an 8-hour day, you've made dinner for the kids, you sit down, you're tired, you don't want to get up. But if you've made an expectation for yourself that, okay, well, the smallest thing I'm going to commit to is like doing the daily 3 exercises, my squats and my, incline push-ups. You're going to have to use some effort to get yourself up and off the couch to do it. And generally, once you get started, then the energy's there and you can complete the task at hand. So again, it's cultivating discipline. It's setting reasonable expectations for yourself, and then keeping the promises that you make to yourself. Okay? And it's not easy. It's hard. And sometimes I'll have a day where I'm like, okay, I am tired, and I don't know if I'm like tired. I don't know if maybe I'm coming down with something. I don't know if my body is asking for rest. Well, generally what I'll do is I'll start onto something. And I'll be like, okay, I'll go through my warm-up. And by the end of my warm-up, I'll know, no, my body did not have it today. Or I'll be like, no, I'm tired, but I can get through this. All right? So sometimes you got to test it out a little bit. Lack of time. Someone put lack of time as their barrier. Well, I will say when I started, I owned 2 businesses, and I was working one in the morning and I was working one in the evening, which again was why I set a small expectation for myself of 100 squats a day that I could knock out in either job. I could do 25 at my lunch break. I could do 25 squats taking another break at my other job. And so I found a way to integrate it into my life, right? If I only had 5 minutes, what could I get done? I could get 25 squats done. I get 25 squats done in less than 5 minutes. So sometimes, again, you have to start creating an expectation of, you can either see things as barriers or you can see every problem has a solution. It may not be the solution you're looking for. Maybe you simply do not have time to strength train for an hour and a half, 5 days a week. That is valid. Your life may not at this point have time allotted for that. But that doesn't mean you can't do anything. You can do something. And that was one of the mantras I took on when I started doing this, was just because I can't do everything doesn't mean I can't do anything. What is the smallest thing I can do and commit to that doesn't require me to change my clothes, that doesn't require me to use any equipment, that doesn't require me to be in any particular location. I don't need anything, right? And that's where I came up with the daily 3, which is the squats, the incline push-ups, and the ab series. You don't need to change your clothes. You can do those in street clothes. You can do them anywhere. You can do them in the office. You can do them at home. You don't need a gym. There's no equipment necessary. And I have people that swear by the daily 3 exercises. They're like, when I can't do anything, I do those. I will do those till the day I die. And when I get off my path with exercise, like maybe, I've had injury, or maybe my schedule hasn't allowed for me to train, I always anchor myself back to the daily 3, because the daily 3 create momentum. What you need more than motivation to get started on something is momentum. And you can only create momentum if you start to do something over and over and over and over again. And that's again why I say go back to the smallest piece that you can commit to and build from there, rather than trying to leap to something that is just not a reasonable expectation to have yet. Yes, the hardest thing is to start, to your point. Yes, the hardest thing is to start, but it only gets started if you start. You have to take action. And it can be really, really hard. It can feel like swimming upstream, but you can have your excuse or you can have your solution. It's your choice which one you decide to indulge that day. Okay, planning. Yeah, planning is a thing. So planning is your struggle. And I'm imagining, I think the person who put this is referring to food planning. They're in the boot camp. And again, I think this is a place, and someone else put overthinking. So I'm going to lump these two together. And that's when we kind of get caught up in our head with the idea of we can make things harder than they actually are. And so I do this all the time, not in this realm of fitness and food, but in other realms. And I'm sure some people can relate. Where you think a task is going to be really daunting, so you put it off and you procrastinate. And finally the time comes where you just can't procrastinate any longer, and it's been hanging over your head, and you finally do it, and it took you 10 minutes. And you're like, well, I kind of built that up in my head as being a lot more problematic than it actually was. And will that stop me from procrastinating in the future? Probably not. But I think when it comes to food planning, people can make that, planning either their food or their exercise, we can make things more difficult than they need to be. And with food planning, it really, once there is a learning curve, I'm not going to lie about that. We spend the first 4 weeks of every boot camp going through that learning curve of tracking accurately and what that entails. But then it can become smooth as butter and very integrated into your life that it really doesn't feel like it takes any time at all. And for me to sit and plan out my meals for tomorrow, it doesn't take me any more than 10 minutes. And actually, when I plan, it makes my life so much easier. It saves me time the next day because I don't have to use any brain energy. Everything I know that I've planned out what I have in the house, or if I plan for several days in advance, it creates my grocery list. I go do whatever. I food prep. If I'm going to cook 1 chicken breast, I'm going to cook 4. It doesn't take any extra time. If I'm going to cook 1 serving of oats, I might as well cook 4, have it all done, sectioned out, because it takes the same amount of time to cook a 1/4 cup of oats as it does to cook 1 cup of oats. So really you have to reframe the story you're telling yourself about the amount of time that it takes. Because maybe at the beginning, yes, with the learning curve, it's a little bit more tedious and takes a little bit more time. But once you learn it, for me, it saves me time, it saves me mental energy. The dog just got in here. Okay, plateauing. Yes, plateauing is another thing that people have put on as a barrier to their fitness journey. And again, that comes back to patience, right? And looking at what needs to be tweaked. So here's what I'll say about plateauing. This is where I think it really is helpful to, at least for a portion of your fitness journey, to be working with someone, to be working with a coach. Because when we plateau, again, we can get in our heads and we can make it mean more than it means to be on a plateau. And so we think we need to start changing all these things because it isn't working anymore. Rather than understanding that there are many factors at play. So I will hit points where I feel like I'm plateauing. And I will talk to my coach, who I'm all for, like, coaches need coaches. So I don't tend to work with people that don't themselves have a coach. So, because even in my coaches I see, we can all do this. We start to overanalyze what's happening, start to assign meaning that doesn't need to be there. And so my coach will be like, hold tight, you're fine, it's only been a week, this is normal in the process. And then, I'm like, oh, I want to change something. But then I'll be right? We hang out and wait. Those changes start to come along again. And generally, the tweaks that we need to make are very small. And when we try to make them ourselves, we kind of make big tweaks. And it might be something like, when I have a client plateauing, it may be like, we're going to do a very 50 to 100 calorie drop in calories, nothing major. Or we're going to add on 20 minutes of cardio 2 days a week. And again, it's very, very individual to the person. What does the plateau look like? How long has the plateau lasted? Usually for me to change someone's plan, the plateau has to have at least lasted 3 weeks. Now, the other thing is we can think we've plateaued and we haven't. So I will tell you a true story for me. My weight last week, I can tell you, I had a big weight drop and then I had a very tiny weight drop. And mind you, I'm paying more attention to this and I have a little bit more stress around it because I have a due date. So I was worried about the fact that it was very small on the scale, and in my legs, my measurements have not changed for weeks. They're measuring exactly the same. But the difference in the pictures is kind of astonishing. So the amount my legs have it recomped this far into prep, which is amazing, meaning I put on some muscle mass and I reduced my fat, which has left me with the same measurement, but totally different looking legs. And I can't see that from the front. I can only see that from the back. So I'm starting to get a more hamstring development, more definition through the back of my legs. I can't see that when I'm looking in the mirror. I can't see that on the scale. I can't see that in the measurement. The only place I can see it is from the photos, which is why we need to have all three modes of information, which is scale, measurements, and photos. Okay? So sometimes we think we're plateauing because the scale isn't going down, or the measurements aren't going down, but changes are happening. And sometimes it's hard for us to see it in the picture. I have people that send me their pictures all the time, clients. They're like, my pictures didn't change much. But they're not seeing what I'm seeing. I can see, actually, their picture has changed quite a bit. So first we have to look at, is the plateau real? Have you really plateaued? Or is there change going on that just isn't making itself readily apparent to us yet? So sticking through those moments and not giving up. And just keep going, keep going, keep going. I'm not seeing change, keep going. I'm not seeing change, keep going. And then those little tiny changes add up. And one day you look back and you're like, whoa, that actually was a lot of change. You can have weeks where all you're losing is a half inch here, a half inch there, a quarter inch here, a quarter inch there. That doesn't look like a lot week to week, but you add that up over 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, it ends up being a lot of inches at the end. So try not to get too much into your own head. Try not to be dissuaded. And at the same time, yes, people can spin their wheels out on a plateau because they don't know what to change. So, and they might move in the wrong direction. Like someone might hit a plateau and think, I need to do way more cardio, which would be maybe for them and their current goal, the opposite of what they need to do. Or someone else might say, oh, I need to like slash my calories and do so much cardio. And then they're still like not getting the results that they want. And sometimes we have to come up to come down. And that's what I was trying to put into a post. Sometimes I hit sort of the bottom of where I could take myself calorically and metabolically. And in order to get stronger and leaner, I had to come up and out of my deficit and out of that plateau and go up in weight and up in fat percentage for a little while I spent time building more muscle so that I could come back down and get leaner than I was when I hit that plateau. So there's lots of nuances and factors to consider in there, which is why I do what I do, because I want to help women get there successfully and not get discouraged and not feel like they're spinning their wheels, never getting the results that they want. Okay, so where my time was. Whew, I only have 3.5 more minutes left of this session of cardio. Okay, so I'm gonna end it here. Please feel free to comment if you're watching this on replay, if you have something to contribute about frustrations that you've had. Oh, one more thing. I did forget this part. I did want to address, because I think Siobhan brought up backtracking or getting off path and then losing gains and being very frustrated because they had kind of like wandered off. And so we can take this back to the consistency thing. So what I generally see is the issue when someone's been on track for quite some time and then they get derailed for quite some time. It sort of is an indicator that it wasn't ever fully integrated, that you hadn't had enough time or consistency at it to fully transition into that integrated self that just does that, right? And that's fine. It's just information. You just go, okay, well, there were still maybe some old stories at play, or like old patterns where I let life become more of, other things in life become more of a priority over the time I'm prioritizing for me. Any number of things. It's just as information that new self hadn't fully integrated yet. And we don't need to waste any time beating ourselves up over that. It's just acknowledging it and getting back to moving forward. Start again. And I don't look at it, I look at the whole thing as a journey. So I don't like when people are like, oh, I'm going to start fresh next week. No, you start fresh every damn day. Whether you did a good job yesterday or not, you wake up, today's a new day, you look at your targets, you do the best job that you can to hit them. So I tend to take out of my vocabulary that black and white, like I'm on, I'm off. I've got to start again. No, you're just continuing to continue. All right? So your journey is going to have these ways that we go. You don't have to like go back to the beginning. All right? Don't think of it like that. Because if you think of it as starting over again, many people will wait to start, right? They'll be like, I'll start again next week. This week is going to go. I'll start again next week. No, don't do that to yourself. Don't do that to yourself. If you want it, you wake up the next day and you make small changes towards where you want to go. It doesn't have to be the huge leap. Again, find that small thing that you can, okay, so I got off doing my hour-long training sessions. Where's my anchor? Anchor daily 3. Okay, I'm going to go back to at least doing my squats and my incline presses every day and build from there. And just get moving. The biggest thing is just take an action. Any action. Maybe it's more water that day. Take an action toward the destination that you're headed, because no matter how small the step is, If the step is forward, it's forward. So just think about momentum, lean into the momentum, create the forward momentum. Once you get enough momentum built up for you, who knows where you're gonna go, right? And how quickly or not. So that's what I have to share with you, goddesses, today. And let me know if this was helpful. And take your next steps. Take your next steps.